Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day 71 of Autodesk Fusion. Today we're working on specifically is making a Trammel, Archimedes Trammel, or sometimes even called a do-nothing machine. So if I were to go ahead and animate this model, what we notice is that you have two sliders followed by an arm that kind of drives those two sliders. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and start a new design and then click on create a sketch. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our base plate. And this base plate allows us to build top down from there. So doing from center rectangle, we're going to do a 5 by 5 square. Go ahead and hit finish sketch. And then we're going to extrude this piece on up 1 inch. Okay, looking good. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut our grooves and then make our slider profile based off of those grooves. What I found to be helpful is to go ahead and just draw a rectangle and then throw in those dimensions. So the overall length of this is already denoted as 5 inches, but we do need to fix this width. I want to make that 1 inch, and then the distance between the edge of that and the edge of the trammel is going to be 2 inches. That way everything is lined up nice and in the middle. Okay. Now to help, I would say, prevent us from repeating that, or you can repeat it if you want, I'm going to go ahead and select, so hold down the control key, all 4 of sides of that rectangle, control C, control V, and this allows me to just copy and paste that geometry. I should be able to move it perfectly in the spot that I need it to be. Just to make sure, we're going to go ahead and dimension this side and that is 2 inches as well. We're looking good. To trim it up a little bit, we're going to go ahead and just erase those intersecting points. I'm going to go ahead and make my body disappear. Yep, and we should be good to go. So let's go ahead and extrude this cross shape inwards 1/2 inch, and then we're also going to give it a 15-degree flare outwards. Click cut and then OK. Alrighty, we have our base made. So if we're going to do this correctly, let's go ahead and make it as a component. So create new component from bodies, select the body, and then click OK. This component we're going to call base. Looking good. Next thing we're going to do is create our slider piece from this profile. So the easiest way to do that is I'm going to hit P on my keyboard for project. We're going to project this geometry onto this sketch plane. You can do a link to it. I tend not to like it because it's very difficult to affect things. You'd want to do a projection link if you want one dimension to reflect on another, you want those to be linked. I haven't quite found a use for them making these smaller parts. We're not making an engine or anything like that, and so projection link tends to not be helpful for me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and make that base inactive so I can see this geometry right here. T on my keyboard for trim. Let's go ahead and trim all those extra geometry pieces I don't need and just connect that top piece. That is looking good. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to extrude this outwards 1 inch and make that a new component as well. The top of my slider piece, we're going to throw in a circle and put a peg in, just so my crank arm has something to latch onto. Let's make that, let's do 0.2 inches. Join, click OK, and that's looking good so far. We're going to call this component 2, we're just going to call it slide, and let's go ahead and make our base active again. That's looking good so far, okay? What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go ahead and just take this and copy it. So rather than trying to make it again, we're going to click on Move Copy, click on a edge that is horizontal, move object components, and then we're going to capture that component and make a copy of it. Now this is really helpful for us when we start to do things, because now I can just move this copy down. I can rotate it and put it in about approximate place of where I'd want it to be. I did move it down just a hair, didn't I? Let's just bring that on, and it doesn't matter too much for right now, because when I throw in my joint constraints, we will be okay there. Go ahead and click OK, and then we're looking good. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and throw in our joint constraints for these slider pieces. But before I do any of that, I have to ground my base. So right click on base. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and ground this. So my base should no longer be able to move. We're looking okay. Now for these slider pieces, let's click on joint. You notice my base is now transparent, and that my sliders are now opaque. This tells me I cannot add a joint to my base, and this tells me my base is grounded. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on the center of this slide with the center of the edge here. Now notice which way I'm selecting this. There is a circle that is kind of, I would say, perpendicular to the surface here. But I want to click on the circle that is flush with that mount right there. And what that does is it puts my slider perfectly on top. That slide should be in the y-axis. That's looking okay. I am going to go ahead and just position this to be flush with the edge right here. Okay, and that's looking all right. Now the second piece right here, when we do the joint constraint, we're going to do the bottom of it, but instead of this edge right here, we're going to do the center of the trammel. And this gives me a rest position where one piece of my trammel is in the middle, one's out in the edge. So at any point when they start to switch places, I know these trammel pieces are already in a good spot. So we're going to click on position. That looks okay. And then we are good to go. So the next piece I'm going to do is build that crank arm. So we don't need the base right now. And what we're going to do then is we're going to create a sketch on that top piece right there. We're going to go ahead and project those two circles right there. Make sure that's selected. Okay. And then I can then take these two slide pieces, make them inactive, and I know I'm good to go. So for this piece right here, what I'm going to do is just make an arm, and you can make this arm kind of as long as you want it to be. The longer the better. It's going to be a little bit longer than you think it would need to be, just based on how the movement of that action goes. But you can kind of change that as you need to. Okay, so our crank arm looks okay. We're going to click Finish Sketch, and we're going to extrude this on up 0.2 of an inch. We're going to make that a new component, then click OK. So our slide pieces are now active. Let's go ahead and make our base active as well, and we can see things are kind of looking okay. So the next thing we're going to have to do is we have to join our constraints to that piece. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit pause on this video, call this one good, and then we'll throw in our last little constraints and then make some fine-tuning edits for our Trammel video. Alright guys, if you have any questions, let me know. Make sure to follow for part 2 where I finish and do the rest of the constraints, and I will see you on the next video.